Welcome to this podcast. It's making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This episode 125. Today's guest has performed in over 50 TV shows and films, including Days of Our Lives, Star Trek Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, Quantum Leap, Murder in the First, and of course, she played Audrey in the season 3 episode of Seinfeld, The Nose Job. Please welcome Susan Diol. Susan, thanks for joining.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm very happy to be here.
So, Susan, I can't believe it. It's been 31 years since The Nose Job aired on NBC on Wednesday night. So take us back. How did the role of Audrey come about? Was there an audition process? Just a little curious how you got that role that you performed so great in.
There was an audition process. And oddly enough, I had auditioned for the pilot for the role of Elaine.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Jerry Seinfeld was in the room, and he was reading with the actors. I didn't know who he was, but now you see the cast, and it's like I don't see how it could have been played by anybody else but Julie Louis-Dreyfus because she's so fantastic. So it was a pilot. So it was you go on these pilot auditions. Sometimes they turn into series, sometimes they don't. So he was in the room, and but I didn't get the part. But then I guess they thought, oh, well, maybe she might be good for this part later on, and so then they brought me in later on for Audrey.
Did you have to audition the second time, or they just gave it to you because they remembered you?
Had to audition, because it was a different character, and so that's how they did it.
Did they have the it was a prosthetic nose where we've gathered, right? Obviously. So did they have that? They didn't have that during the audition though, right? They just kind of
no, not at all.
worked through it, yeah.
No, and not even during any rehearsals or anything. So it was an interesting process because the day of shooting, they of course we had to do dress rehearsal, and so they did the nose job. They created the nose, and so I had to wear it, and it was funny because there were some people who, not any of the cast was awesome, but there were some people who just, like, I'd had conversations with at craft service or something. And then I was like, oh, hey. And they just looked at me like, oh, hi. So all of a sudden, you felt like, well, I don't know if you guys know who Jimmy Durante was, but he had this, I felt like, a female Jimmy Durante, and people were just like, oh, poor thing. She's just kind of homely, with that big schnoz on her. And it was just kind of illuminating to see, oh, wow, some people, they don't even know that that I'm the same person that they were having an in-depth conversation with 2 days ago. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, that's really funny that they kind of pulled the fast one there. So speaking of that, there's the one scene where we're going to skip around a little bit, but just because you kind of mentioned the prosthetic there, but there's the one scene when you're in the coffee shop with Jason, with George, and they never really show your face, right? He's just kind of looking at you. We have to imagine what it looks like, and we just see the back of you, and you're telling about taking a trip to Hawaii and all that kind of stuff. I'm curious, did they even try and do something so it looked not good? And it didn't work out. So they said, let's just shoot her from the back. Or that was kind of the plan the whole time, to kind of have George kind of looking.
Yeah, that was the plan the whole time. And I think that the beauty of that scene was the expressions on their faces. Like Julia Louis going, oh, it's, that was all they needed, instead of having to, because they would have had to remove the other prosthetic nose, create a whole other one. It would have been very time consuming. These makeup jobs like this, and when I did like Seinfeld, Star Trek with a big forehead, and I did Alien Nation with a big bald, these things take a long time. So I think it just wouldn't be cost effective to have had the extra nose. And I just think that their reactions were just so hilarious that was the best part of it.
Yeah. And what's great is you got to kind of had access to the big four, right? You had scenes with all four characters, which is really unique for a guest star. And we'll dig a little bit into that. But I guess, what do you remember this was season 3, right? So Seinfeld was just about kind of taking off. It was still Wednesday nights. you've done a lot of work. You did a little, Cosby Show, Growing Pains, Night Court. Just tell us a little bit about like the vibe of the set and kind of what you saw, from Larry, Jerry, and how the show was run. And then obviously it catapulted into an all-time great, but would love to hear the perspective from those early years and kind of what you thought about the show.
I think that they were all extremely friendly. They acted like I'd been on the show with them for years. There was like because sometimes that happens. You'll be a guest actor on a show and the lead actors are not always nice to the guest actors. They just aren't. Most of the time they're really, really lovely. But this time they were so welcoming and so natural. It was just like I was one of them. There was never any weirdness or anything. We would be on set and Kramer would be like, "Hey, what about this bit? If I do this," and then Jerry would say, "What do you think about that, Susan?" It was just like I was one of them, and I think that's probably how they were with most people. They just like, "Hey, we're in this show now. You're part of the show. We're going to just bring you in," and and it's interesting to see the success of like Larry David as an actor because he clearly was so funny even as a producer. He has that delivery of lines, and he's very funny and that's how he was even back then. He was a very talented person who I guess his day has come in terms of being an actor, creator, producer, and having a very successful show, which is pretty wonderful. He's just terrific. So even back then, him and Peter Millman, the producers were lovely. Everybody, the director, Tom, they just treated you like you were one of the family, which was lovely.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We've heard that on other times, so that's great to hear that you kind of had the same feeling, especially with Peter. He wrote your episode, kind of take us through the week for you. I mean, I know we had we've talked to some guest stars who they're just there for kind of their scene, but your character actually was really the focal point of the episode. I mean, you were in 4, 5, 6 scenes with the like Chris mentioned, the entire cast, the major 4. So you were definitely a focal point. So I mean, the way you mentioned them kind of welcoming you in makes sense because I mean you were a major part of the show. But what did it feel like from like table read to rehearsal to actually, like you mentioned, dress rehearsal, then shooting? Was there a lot of changes being made, a lot of directions being given, or it was kind of just a well-oiled kind of machine and you kind of just went through and everything kind of stayed the same?
I mean, it really felt like it was a well-oiled machine at that point. You do the table read and it's exciting. I mean, it's always exciting, a table read when you're a guest star, because you're just like sitting across from Jerry Seinfeld or, some other very famous actor who's just terrific. And it's such a thrill, but it's also terrifying because, that table read, if you don't get the laughs, the next day you come to rehearsal and all of a sudden your lines are gone. I was a setup guy, mostly, the straight man to serve those brilliant actors. But there's a lot of nervousness, at least for me, at the table read, because you just want to do a good job and come back the next day.
Yeah. So it's interesting how you kind of auditioned for Elaine back in the day and then came back, but there was still that kind of nervousness on set. Is that just your kind of natural instinct?
I think it just comes. I think it's probably just me in terms of wanting to do a good job, and it's live. It's like theater, and the pace is fast, and everybody's so super funny. You're just like, I want to do a great job. So
yeah, I mean, and you did a great job. And for those listening on audio, Susan has not aged in 31 years. I don't know what you're eating, but you look great, Susan.
Zoom has this thing where you can say, improve my appearance. And so,
so yeah, we love that. We love that opening scene when you're kind of sitting there eating the pizza and, I love that the whole dynamic, because it's rare that all four of them are together with another guest star. And obviously you were Elaine's friend and you were staying with her, I guess, because Tina, Siobhan Fallon, who've had on guest star, was out of town. So that was kind of interesting. But just, tell us a little bit like what that was like. I mean, Kramer was doing his thing, and obviously the line, right? We all know the line was it's probably one of the most, if not one of the top 5 most famous lines, I guess, delivered on Seinfeld. But it's just like keeping a straight face, right? And
your reaction's great. Your reaction's great.
And back then, a lot of people were kind of giggling. Jerry's not the best actor. It was kind of working on his acting, and you always laugh and things like that. But I'm just, from your perspective, like, what was that like? I mean, having all those reactions, like you said, and just being a part of that ensemble, which again, really rare for a guest star. And secondly, what kind of pizza was that? It looked a little thick. Yeah. Would love to know what kind of pie that was.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a good New York pie. I don't think so. I can't remember. I can't remember what kind of pizza it was, but it was just a lot of fun. They made the whole job just a lot of fun. They are so bright and quick and witty and funny, all of them, the writers and all the actors, that you just feel like you have to be at the top of your game, because they just coming up with these one-liners, and they're just outdoing each other, and then wanting input, asking what I thought. That felt really nice to have that kind of mutual collaboration and respect, but it really was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks to me, the scene that really sticks out is when George is convinced, Jason Alexander, George is convincing you kind of to get the nose job, and you're on the couch with him, and you seem so relaxed. You're smiling. You really played the part so well. You just seem so like relaxed and girlfriend, like wholesomeness. I don't know. There's something about the scene where you could just tell that you and Jason must have had a connection in that respect, and that he must have been so welcoming to you. We've heard stories of him offset, like helping people out with different things and just really being generous. We've heard great stories about the craft services on the Seinfeld set, just kind of off the set when things aren't being shot. Was there anything there, like stories that you can remember of just kind of interacting with Jason or any of the other staff or crew, where you're kind of backstage or advice given or things like that? I don't know if there's anything that kind of sticks out. I know it's 30 years ago, but
I just remember it being such a great experience, and just excited to go to set every day, excited to get to work, and seeing what they might come up with, because they're so talented. It was really thrilling to just be in this environment with these extremely talented people. And, I think that most of the time we were working, there wasn't like a lot of downtime. It's not like on a set where you're doing like an hour-long show where you have to, you rehearse, and then everybody goes and takes a break, and then they light, and then it was just run so well that you were mostly working, and everybody was just really friendly. I can't remember. The only thing was when people didn't recognize me, but that was kind of funny to me.
That is funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was such a special episode. The 3 guest stars kind of all stood out in their own special way. Did you have the landlord? Babs Kramer, that guy. And we've had, Tony Katayan on. May she rest in peace. But I'm curious. I'm curious if you had any interaction with her. She kind of said similar things. Everyone was so sweet and nice on the set and so welcoming. Would love to see if you had any interactions with some of the guest stars like Tawny and Roy, the landlord.
Yeah, she was just really, sweet and so beautiful, but not really aware. It's just like not even, she just was a natural person that it's like she didn't even know how beautiful she was. And I'm playing this big nosed girl, and there she is, the sexy thing. But she was really sweet and lovely. And Roy Brocksmith was actually a very close friend of mine. He cast me in my first professional job as an actor to be in Viola in Twelfth Night at the Alaska Repertory Theater. And so he and I were friends ever since that. I'd go over to his house and play poker with Doe Avedon, who was the widow of Richard Avedon, the famous photographer, and all these other. He was such a character, and he did a lot of great movies and things. But he had a wonderful experience on the show as well. We were just both so thrilled to be on the show, and then we were so excited that we both were on the same show, even though we didn't have anything to.
Yeah, that is so cool that you were friends with him and you both got on the show at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Really exciting for both of us, and he would say things like, "God, wouldn't you just love it if we could just be on a show like this every week?" And I think you feel a little sad when it's over because you're like part of the cool kids, and then they go on, and then you're time for you to leave. So it's a little disappointing because you just feel like you're really part of the whole thing.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of Seinfeld is you are a part of the whole thing, even though that's why we're talking. I mean, the show has lived on. So I mean, you might not have known that was going to happen when it aired, back in whatever it was, 93 or so, but it really has moved on. I mean, that's what's the beauty of the show is all of the guest stars, shine and the fact that we're still talking to you is the reason for that. I mean, even you and Tawny were the focal points of the entire episode. It wasn't even Kramer had the small part with the jacket, but it was really, speaking of that at the end with the reggae lounge, we've always, we were kind of just talking about that right before you came on. It's Kramer just kind of swoops right in there. Not even, no loyalty to George whatsoever. Just, were you guys going as just friends? How did you kind of see that scene playing out? Or were you guys an item at that point?
I think I saw it as that we were an item. Yeah. And it was just kind of like, too bad for you, George.
Could have been.
Kramer was like so blunt, but, he was honest and, saying, oh, she'd be great if she just had whatever I know I'm paraphrasing the line, but she just needs a nose job. I mean, there was something about his directness that I guess she found refreshing. And, George didn't really like her very much after the first nose job. So yeah, I thought that they were dating, but probably it wasn't going to last too long just because of how.
Yeah, Kramer doesn't like to be tied down.
It's so interesting. Yeah, after the reveal, like you went back to George after he passed out. The whole thing, embarrassing. Offered to go to Hawaii with him. Just such a good girlfriend, such a good person, and that just kind of set the stage for George moving forward and kind of where his priorities are. And obviously, it's all about him, but.
I think it's in the top 100 episodes of the show.
Yeah, it's in our top 100. It's in, for sure.
The Seinfeld fans love it. And when they realize that they're like, oh wait, you were on Seinfeld? Which show were you on? I said, oh, I was in the nose job. Are they like, oh my God, that was you? That was you? And they get so excited, and it's just really sweet because they just really liked the character and liked that episode.
Yeah, it's interesting you just mentioned that. Do you you auditioned for Elaine, right? And then a few years passed. Now you're on the show in season 3. Were you then sort of a fan of the show later on? Like, were you watching it? Like, do you have favorite episodes or favorite of your own that you're like, I am actually a fan of the show and I do watch it still, or I have watched it enough? And
I definitely was a fan of the show, and then I've always been a fan of the show. I mean, to me, it's just a great go-to. You want to laugh. You just want to see these people and how they're noticing life and commenting on life. And, it's a go-to show to have a good time. And it's because I was on the show in a way, it's like, oh, I'm seeing my old friends. And it sounds kind of silly, but, it's true. It's like a memory. It's like, there they are, the old gang. And it's just so delightful, that show, and funny, and the crazy things they go through, like the parking garage scenes and all, there's just so many of them that I love. Now you're making me think I want to go and start from the beginning and watch them again.
Yeah, what's special about your show is it's so early on, but I think it does such a good job of character development of the four, right? Like Elaine, like yelling at George becoming George, Jerry, with all these beautiful women, and, Kramer saying those blunt things, like you said, and then kind of winning out in the end. Like, your episode really kind of set the stage for the whole series, for that matter. I mean, that's what Peter Melman did a great job of, clearly. But yeah, but trying to think, was there anything, because there was so much packed in that episode, like I have to assume a lot kind of got cut. Like, were there any scenes you remember that you think could have made the cut, that you recall, or extra scenes that you were in? And it was only 31 years ago, I know, but
no, I can't. It seems to me that the script stayed pretty much intact. Now, I could be wrong. I wish I could find that copy of the script. I must have it somewhere. But it seems to me that it didn't change that drastically. I don't think it did. Have they said other episodes?
We don't know. We like to ask it because you never know, right? But it does. Most guest stars say no. There was nothing cut. Every once in a while we'll get a story out of it, but depending on the script. But typically it sounds like they stick to the script. I think later on it was more things got cut because later on they were doing so many more takes and different, these quick little shots of different places, and things got kind of cartoonish, if you will, towards the end in seasons 8 and 9. But your season 3, really from 2 to 5, it's pretty well packed, and Melman wrote it. Usually his scripts are tight, and so it doesn't. We like to ask though, because you never, sometimes stories come out.
Yeah, I think Dan Cortez, Hunky Tone, who had a similar, thing on his face, I think he did a couple extra scenes with Elaine. That's the only reason it's coming to mind. Is like you doing some extra scenes potentially with George or Kramer. But yeah, I mean, just such an iconic episode. What else? I mean, I guess, how does it compare? We always like to compare, because you've been on so many other shows outside of kind of, I think, the humility you mentioned of the kind of core four, if you will. What else was different, and how did this show prepare you? Because you were still really young in your career. How did kind of the learnings you gathered from this show kind of prepare you for everything you did in the future, if at all?
I think that, look, when you're working with that level of talent, when across the board, the actors and the writers and the producers, you have to step up your game, and you're kind of observing what everybody's doing. You're watching. I'm watching. I'm like, oh my gosh, like Julie Louis-Dreyfus. I mean, she is just brilliant. And then, of course, she went on to do her other shows, and then Veep, which was great. I was just like taking it all in. I was just taking it all in, watching, Jerry was so funny because he would, sometimes break and laugh, and, it was just, but it worked. It worked. It's kind of like when on Saturday Night Live, when someone starts, like Jimmy Fallon, when they start laughing at you kind of love those moments as an audience as well. So I think that, I just learned a lot about what to do, what not to do. And to be generous and kind. If I'm in that position where I'm the star of a show, I would be generous and kind, and like they all were, and very funny and sarcastic. No, I wouldn't. Well, I might. I don't know.
So, Susan, you're Midwest, right? You're from the Midwest originally, and then I know you did a lot of theater work. How did that? We kind of like to hear the background. How did that whole start for you? How did the career in acting? Where did that come from? Especially growing up in the Midwest, like maybe you can touch on that.
Liberal arts college called Audrey College, and I only applied to 2 schools. One of them was Denison and Otterbein. Now, had I gotten into Denison, I would have been in class with Steve Carell.
I was just going to say, he's the guy I know from Denison. Yeah.
Yeah, that would, I mean, but I only got into Otterbein because my SAT scores were not great. But in my the theater program at Otterbein had an internship program where they would send actors to, you'd go to for a semester to go to like the Actors Theater of Louisville or things like that. My senior year, they started having internships in New York City. And I was one of the two first guinea pigs to go to New York City to work with the casting office. And that working at that casting office, which was Pat McCorkle Casting, changed my entire life because I just was the kind of person where they, I got to the office and I'd worked in my dad's office at his coffee company as a kid. And so I came in, I said, oh, well, we need to do this. And I just started I just did the work and they were just like, wow, you don't have to do all that stuff. But I thought, no, I have to do the best job. My dad said, whatever job you have, you do the best job you can. So what happened was I became a reader for auditions. So I would get to read with the actors auditioning. And we're talking like a young Bill Pullman, who I had a huge,
wow.
He was the sweetest guy. And I'm getting to read scenes. So I'm watching all these wonderful New York actors. A lot of them went on to become, film stars like he did. And he was so shy and sweet. And I remember him saying to me, I'm in a play, would you like to come? And here it is. And I was like, oh yeah, of course. And I, of course, was from Ohio and a little bit sheltered. And I go to his play, which was Curse the Starving Class. And I'm in the front row and he's naked. And he's 3 feet in front of me. And I'm just, oh my gosh. He's naked. I was just I guess I hadn't seen a lot. But, so being a reader, then, Roy Brocksmith was casting this play and I was the reader so what happened was once I graduated from college, Pat McCorkle, thank you so much, Pat McCorkle, said, you know what, whenever you decide to move to New York, come and we want you to work and you can be a reader again. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So I made a good impression. Luckily I worked really hard. So when I got back, Roy Brocksmith was directing Twelfth Night at the Alaska Repertory Theater, and I was the reader. And now I had done Twelfth Night in college, so I knew the play very well. And I'm seeing these actors come in, and the actresses, going for the lead part, Viola. And I was just getting kind of frustrated because I felt like they weren't really having, the passion. And so we had a lunch break, and I turned to Roy and I said, could I audition for the play? Would you mind? And he's like, oh, well, yes, I guess it was basically like, okay, little reader. Yes, of course you can. And so I said, great, because I really would like to read for the part of Viola. And so somebody else came in to read with me, and he's like, that's it. We got to cast her. And I remember Pat saying, well, she doesn't have her equity card. And he's like, I don't care. We're going to Taft-Hartley her. We're going to get her. We're going to, I want to cast her. And so he and Pat McCorkle were responsible for the beginning of my whole career. And so from that, it just went on to other things. And then I had an agent, Pat House of the Actors Group Agency. And I just kept getting work. And, but it was because of Roy and Pat McCorkle. So it's funny then that Roy and I were in Seinfeld together.
Yeah, that's incredible that you ended up in Seinfeld together all those years later. Wow. What a story.
And that voice looks a lot like you, Professor. I can't, was that was his real voice that he always had?
He had an amazing speaking voice. And also he had a beautiful singing voice. He did Three Penny Opera, I believe, on Broadway. And he just was bigger than life. We would play cards and he would kind of hold court, and he'd be smoking and talking and telling stories about this actor or that actor, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall. And he also did Arachnophobia, and he did Twins with Danny DeVito. And, so he he was just a gem of a person.
Arachnophobia. I remember seeing that in the theater, by the way.
Yeah, I was with you.
You've been in a lot of like Seinfeld, obviously Star Trek. We always ask kind of these cultish shows, like where you most recognize from. And I know you've kind of partnered with, some of the women we've had, the women of Seinfeld. I know you guys did a little show out in LA. Would love to hear about that and just kind of like the connection, whether it's with, people that you were on the show with who have passed on, but kind of just speak with some of the other women from Seinfeld and kind of how that relationship kind of sparked and kind of tell us a little bit about that experience of the women of Seinfeld.
Well, it is funny because, when you're in the olden days, we used to go to auditions live. Now everything is on. You take yourself and send in your take. You're not having to go to the office, so you're also not having to schlep and drive. And everybody, it's just a win-win for everyone now, because trying to get like the producer and everybody in the same room, it just took a lot more time. But in the olden days, when we would have to go to auditions, there you'd be sitting, and there'd be Sandra Bullock auditioning for something, or Mariska Hargitay and I. We were in an acting class together. With one of Roy's dearest friend, Jose Quintero, who was this famous Broadway director. And Mariska, I'd see her at auditions, and she was this person, she's now on Special Victims SVU. She's been on it for years. Yeah, she's fantastic. But she would come in and she just light up the room. She'd be talking to everybody. She had so much confidence. I would always think, God, she has so much confidence. But so it's the same with the ladies of Seinfeld. You'd run into people at auditions and you'd recognize them, from having seen them on Seinfeld. And sometimes there'd be a connect. Oh, you were, yeah. And you were, yeah. So when we just did this convention, I think it was in last August or September, I was with all these ladies that I didn't know, but we were sitting there all day signing autographs, and it was really fun. It's like being in this special club of, it's like, oh yeah, I dated George. Oh yeah, me, as characters, it was a really, really cool thing. And so we had people coming. I had people also from Star Trek and Quantum Leap wanting autographs as well. And some of the other ladies had done other shows, but it's just kind of being in this cool club. So that's how it felt.
It's a really cool club, and I think we could double check this. I think you're the only girl who dated both George and Kramer in an episode. Maybe it's a pretty good honor.
Yeah, I would.
Tony's thinking about it.
I'm thinking there's definitely a Jerry Kramer overlap at one point, but I don't think there's ever been a George Kramer. I think you're the only George Kramer overlap.
Well, then that's a good club to be in.
Yeah, part of Seinfeld history.
Yeah.
Susan, this was great. I mean, we can't thank you enough. Obviously, your role will forever be remembered. I mean, it was called the nose job, for crying out loud, and I mean, your grace and just kind of just the way you took the role and worked with it, and we can't thank you enough. And we're so excited to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you, Susan. This was so much fun.
It was really nice to meet you, and I'm gonna start listening to the podcast and telling people about it.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Thank you so much, and good luck with everything in the future.
Thank you so much. Very nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, have a great night.